Welcome to People Love Process. When it comes to Adobe Illustrator, I'm not always so thrilled with the newest features they add. Their track record tends to release half-baked features. The latest would be the repeat grid functionality. But that said, they did an absolutely great job with the width tool when they released it. So in this movie, I want to show you how I use that to add thick and thins to continuous line strokes to make my designs more dramatic. So let's jump into it. Our theme for this artwork and design is going to be an owl. And it doesn't matter what style you're working in, whether it's realistic or in this case stylized, it always benefits to look at reference so you can pick up those attributes that make an owl look like an owl. Now, owls are one of my favorite animals. They're kind of like the cats of the bird world, in my opinion. But I love in the Pacific Northwest where I live, there's owls all over the place. So a really fun topic. Now, I'd say about 3 years ago, I did a series of linear line drawings, and I even did the owl. So this is the linear style. This is one continuous line, and this series that I did on wildlife, I did an owl and I did all kinds of other animals for this series over a period of about 2 months. These were all realistically proportioned but carried forth in this one continuous line style. Now, our proportions that we want to do for the art we're creating in this movie isn't going to be realistic proportioned. It's going to be inspired by a real owl, that is, but we're going to take a more novel approach to it. So this is where I started in terms of my drawing process to work out my idea. Is I wanted an owl. I just didn't want it to be specifically realistically proportioned. I want it to be more of a character because essentially it's going to end up being a promotional graphic for a park where a lot of kids play, actually where I played growing up. And I want it to be funner than that, not so serious and realistic in terms of its styling. So this is the thumbnail sketch. I'll also do a rough drawing where I'm dialing in the pose specifically, but this is kind of how I start when I'm doing a linear style, because the hardest part of working in a linear line style is figuring out how to map that path. So I try to work out the form and not worry about it being one continuous line. That's what I did here. I like the general form. We're going to have to, work on the feet. I don't want them to just be lines. But if you can figure it out at this stage like this, then it's easy to figure out how to connect lines to make that repeated path kind of shape everything. And this is best shown. So let me show you my refined sketch, because I just drew on top of this, used it for my proportions, and then I just went in and kind of connected lines and connected shapes, but kept the overall kind of shape and feel of my rough drawing to finish my refined sketch. So if you look at this, you can see it starts at this point in the eye. You can start anywhere. You just have to realize that with this style that at one point there's the line here and it goes around the eye, up on the brows, down into the beak, up above the eye, up to the horn, the feathers that make the horned owl. And then the top, a couple feathers up there on the top. And that's another thing with my sketch. I didn't have feathers up there. So I improved it where I thought it needed that kind of detail as I drew it out. This style also benefits if you add some loops. Now, you don't want to get too crazy with the loops. And I added quite a few loops in this. And normally I don't add that many. But for an owl, I wanted to kind of give that appearance of feathers. So I have it doing that as it goes down through the chin, the side of the head, into the arm that he's kind of pointing up, into the chest, down into the feet, like that, into the tail, back up into this wing on his left side, and then it ends on the feathers that make up the front part of his chest. So it's a fun style. The only part of this that's not part of the continuous line is the eyes. And that in this style would be considered a free-floating acceptability in terms of this style. Let's say you did a light bulb in this style. Well, you could have little lines going off of it to reflect light, and I've done that in icons in this style. This style, by the way, was really popular for just a little over a decade. Not so popular now, but it's still a fun style to work in, so I still like doing it. So we're going to select this. I'm going to set the opacity for this layer to 15%. Go ahead and lock it. And this is where I'm going to start building on a layer on top of it. So where would be the best place to start? Well, for me, any shape that's the easiest to create is the best place to start. And with the ellipse tool, we can create these eyes in a matter of seconds. So that would be the place to start. There is no pen tool work there. It's just shape building with the elliptical tool. But where do I start on this? I usually start on the face when it's a face-oriented motif like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on the area I want to focus on, which is going to be his eyes and the top of his head. And a good place to start when you're working, let's go ahead and switch to the pen tool, is I like to start on a corner. Now there's two types of anchors in Illustrator, corner anchor points and smooth anchor points. And the only anchor points that tend to be troublesome at times is the smooth ones, because that's how you build the elegant curves. So it's all about knowing where to place anchor points. So I'm just going to walk you through what I call rough building. This is how I tend to build, is I'll start, in this case, we're going to start at the tip of the horned owl's, not his ear really, but as much as his feather at the top of the head. Then I'm going to go wherever it comes to a point or a corner, gets a point. Those are easy to discern. These are all easy to click and figure out, especially if you work out your drawing, you're giving yourself a roadmap to build on. Now, I don't worry about the curves at this point. That's going to be a second pass I'm going to show you. Now that we're in a curve shape, I'm going to put it at the apex here, click and pull just to give access to those anchors. Go down here, back to a corner, gets a point, click and pull to get access to this curve. I'm going to go to this point, and that's all we're going to do is we're going to lay down our anchors. Now between this point and all the way down to the beak, this is a curved line, so it's going to need an anchor point somewhere along here, and I think the best location would be right about here. So we'll click and we'll pull it out to give access to those handles later, then go to the point of the beak, inside point of the beak, the bottom part of the beak, and this part. Now as it curves up here, if you think like a clock, it's called what I call the Clockwork Method. It's going to help you figure out where would this associate with the clock. Well, maybe it's the 12 o'clock position. So I want to place it as close to that tangent as I can get. Now, you have to keep in mind, you're never going to get it perfect. You're trying to get your anchor points in the right location. But if you need to finesse them, you can do that on the next stage. As it goes into the eye, this is a circular shape. We're going to put one at a 6 o'clock position. Once again, I don't pull these all the way out and try to create the curve. I just pull them out enough to have access to them in our second pass. Then this will be a 9 o'clock position. And then this is short enough we can go right to this corner. We can go up into the top of the brow here where it's a feather, pull out those, come down here, click. And then we're going to pull out these to get that curve, come down here to the point and click. This is a pretty long arch, so I'm probably going to put one right about here and pull it out. Then we'll go here, add this one, click to the point, go ahead and pull out here, click. This goes down to the corner. Once we're into a circular shape again, I'll find a approximate 12 o'clock position like this, 9 o'clock position, 6 o'clock position, 3 o'clock position, and then we'll end it here. So this is what I would call my rough build. Is it perfect? No, it doesn't need to be, because now we're going to go to the anchor point tool, and this is where we'll do path shaping. So we're just going to hover over this path, click on it, and pull. And we're just going to click our curves like this. Now, when we get to like the ear, these are easy like that. You can see the handles automatically appear when we do this. And if we want to adjust this one, we want to just click and just barely pull this out just to get access to this handle. Then we can grab the handle. Then we can go here and make adjustments if we need to adjust that curve. So that's what I do there. Once again, grab the anchor point tool to get access here. Pull this out just barely. And the reason why I say barely is I don't want to disrupt this corresponding anchor point. So if I use this tool and I pull it out too far, notice how it'll affect the other anchor point handle. So that's why I don't pull it out, because it just makes more work. You're kind of messing up your path. And this is one reason why I tend to use a plugin to do this. Not that you can't do it natively in Illustrator. You can. You just have to go a bit slower because you don't want to cause those problems. So you'd pull it out just a little. You can see it move this still. And then you can grab it and you can adjust it like this. So it's not that you can't do it in Illustrator. You can natively. It's just going to go a little slower. This is why I use what's called the Pathscribe tool. It's part of Vectorscribe plugin by Astute Graphics. And I use it because I can hover over a path and notice this little node shows up. That's called a ghost handle. And the nice thing about it is I don't have to grab the path and adjust it to get access to the handle. I can just grab this node and pull it out, done. And it doesn't affect the corresponding anchor point. That's why I use it. That's why I like it. We can isolate this one. I can adjust this curve to get that. I can go back to that Pathscribe handle. Notice this node shows up and I can adjust it. This is why I like it. It also works the same way where you can grab a path and adjust it, or you can grab a node and adjust it like this. And it just makes the process a whole lot easier. Does it mean you can't do this in Illustrator? No, you can using the anchor point tool, but it's just going to take longer because it's not as intuitive and it's not as easy. So it's not an impossibility. It's very possible. It's just going to take a little longer to do it natively in Illustrator. And this is why plugins exist. This is why I use plugins. It just makes the process go faster. So that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through on a second pass and I'm just going to adjust all these curves here to align with my drawing underneath, because I spent the time to work out my drawing. Why? Because it works as a roadmap for vector building. And it just makes the process easier. I'm not trying to decide, well, what shape am I going to make this, or how is this going to look? I try to figure all that out in the drawn stage. So all it comes down to in vector building is craftsmanship. And that's the way it should be. And here is all of these paths now adjusted. I think this looks pretty good. And that's the way I work. Now, I don't isolate an area like this. This is just so I could show you the process. I tend to build out the whole path in a rough form like this. Then I'll go back and do those finessing with the curves that I showed you using the anchor point tool, and also in my case, the plugin using the Pathscribe tool, part of Vectorscribe plugin. Whether you have a plugin, whether you just use the native features in Illustrator, you can do it. It's just going to take, once again, just a little longer. So this is what I'll end up with, is all of my finessed vector shapes. And I think this is looking pretty good. It's at this stage now, I needed to determine the thickness of my line. Right now, I believe I'm at a 1 point. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and beef this up to maybe 3. You want it a little beefy because what we're going to use now is the width tool to kind of add thick and thins to this and really make it more engaging. So you can notice right now we have flat caps at the end. So where it comes to end, these will be flat. I like to change those to rounded. I think it looks nicer. And then on the corners, I don't want these coming to sharp vertices. So we're going to click on round on the corners so it rounds those. So let's go ahead and zoom in so I can show you the difference. This is rounded. This is sharp. And the reason why I don't like sharp is I don't like it coming to a point, and when it goes interior like this, I don't like it turning to a flat. It just looks better rounded like that. So these are the settings. This is the thickness. Here's we have 3 points. And now the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and color this black like that. So we have the stroke is now 3-point. We turned on round corners and a round cap. We're now ready to start rounding, not rounding, I'm sorry, add thick and thins. And the way this works, let's go and zoom in again so you can see what I'm doing here, is we're going to go to the width tool. And it's this tool right here. And we're going to click on it. And the way the width tool works is wherever you click on a path, you can add it. You can make it thinner than what it shows or thicker than what it shows. And if you go up to the top here, you have these presets to add tapering to a path if you want it, or to adjust the profile here. And you can do all these. Well, technically, this technology is built into the width tool. You're just doing it manually. So you can make a custom profile, and you could even save it into this menu up here so you could use it later if you wanted to. I don't so much do that, but let's go ahead and focus on the width tool now. We're going to go to the corner here. If I click and pull, notice it's making this thicker like that. And you can see how it makes it thicker. That looks pretty good. We're going to go to this one. We'll add a little thickness here. I think this is getting a little thin here. Let's go ahead and this is where you might want to zoom in just to get better control so you can see the controls. And we'll make that a little thicker like that. So that's how you would make it thicker. If you wanted to add one here, you could, but you could go thinner. So this is how you can go thick to thin to thick. I don't really like that, so we're not gonna, I'm gonna Command Z that. And then on this one, I think I'm gonna leave this the same way, but I think here, I'm gonna make this a little thicker like that. Now, sometimes when it eats to the inside, it doesn't look super elegant. So if you hold Option down, you can move in one side so you can get that nice curve back. And then you can just extend it to the outside. So that's how you can finesse the controls. And I have to admit, when this first came out, I was like blown away. I'm going, okay, they really spent the time to do this tool right. And that's not always the case with Adobe. They tend to kind of release products that are like, really? Why didn't you do this or do that? And on this one, I just think they hit it out of the park. So if I hold Option down, we can do it just to the outside. If I let go of Option, it'll just do it on each side. And this is usually what I do. And you can see how it's creating those weird overlap shapes. That's okay, because we're going to end up expanding this to begin with to get the final art here. So this is all I do, is I would just zoom in. And I do recommend zooming in. It's a lot easier to control things when you can see it, because if you're zoomed out, it's hard to see exactly what you're controlling. And I just think this works better. I think this one could go a little larger like that. Then we'll go down here, and I'm probably going to add a thick here like this. So it goes thin into thick. And this is how I'm controlling kind of the visual narrative of this. I want this to get thick, but now this is too thick down here. So I'll come in here and thin this out. And this is how you can really control this. And the only other way you could really do this natively in Illustrator is if you had a Wacom and use pressure sensitivity and you're inking this. Then again, it wouldn't be as precise as the way we're doing it here. And I like controlling that. I like having that kind of control when I'm working on a design like this. I don't want it to be so organic. It's just being drawn on the fly. So this is where, oops, I don't want that. Let's undo it. This is why I like Command Z. I wish I had Command Z like in real life. That'd be that'd be like a superpower. Let's go like this. And then I think up here we'll make this thinner like that. And then as it gets into the eye, I think, and I usually try to do my adjustments on where I have the nodes. It just makes more sense to utilize those since they create the shape itself. I think it controls it even better. We'll make this like that. We'll do a couple more. I'm obviously not going to do the whole thing because we'll hold Option down here and I'll go to the outside like that. And so if we zoom out, you can see how we've added thick and thins to this. If I go to the keyline view, you can see it's still just a stroke. So it's applying that profile. And if you look up here, you can see the profile we've applied. It almost looks like a flatline heartbeat. And it even works on shapes such as the eye here. We can use the width tool to kind of tie that into the overall design. We might make it kind of like that, or we might go over here. Once again, it doesn't have to be on the anchor points. I just tend to do that. So that's how the width tool works. That's how you control it. I think this is going to look really cool. And with all the thick and thins in place, this is what you end up with. Now, once again, if I go to the keyline view, you can see all of this is just a stroke still, and it's not expanded. So that's where expanding the art comes into play. And I don't want all of these to be black either. What we're going to do here is, let's go ahead and slide this down. We're going to go ahead and color this stroke a nice brown like that. And all we're going to do is expand it. So let's go ahead and select everything now. And we're going to go up to Object. And we're going to go down to Expand Appearance. And you can see now, if we go back to keyline view, there's no more stroke and it's expanded everything into shapes. Now let's zoom into areas like this. So if we go to keyline, you can see where it overlaps. All of that will be resolved as soon as we unite it using Pathfinder. So if we go to Pathfinder and I go Unite, it's now going to take care of all those areas that were kind of overlapping. The only part about this functionality I don't really like is how many anchor points it adds to my artwork. I really wish it was smarter in terms of knowing what anchor points is really needed to retain the shape that I created and what aren't. Now, how do I resolve this? Well, to be honest with you, if you just deselect, it looks fine. It doesn't really matter those anchors are in there, but I don't like delivering art that's kind of messy like that. So I'm just going to show you how I clean it up. And unfortunately, this isn't in Illustrator natively. If you use Illustrator Lite on the iPad, it has some smart remove features, but that hasn't come to the desktop yet. So I'm going to show you something that I use, which is the Vectorscribe plugin. We're going to go to the Smart Remove brush because what I can do is just wipe over these areas on my artwork, and it only removes the ones that aren't needed and retains the path. And look at how nice that is. And this also tells me another thing, because vector is nothing but math. And it tells me the math is there, that they could code this so when it expands, it would know how to clean it up. They just haven't. And Astute, that's why they exist, is they create plugins that benefit from the math. And that's how I go through and clean up everything. So it's a really nice feature, a really nice tool. I use it all the time, specifically when I'm working on a design like this. Because right now, even with just that, I keep wanting to say ear. I don't think that's an ear. The feather on the horned head of the owl that I cleaned up, that removes some of them. But you can still see this has almost 2,500 anchor points. And it really doesn't need that much, especially in the eye. It's just absurd that these circular shapes, all you need is 8 to create this. And I don't know, there's a ton here. So actually, nope, I can't select it. Well, I guess I could. Let's go ahead and direct select it here like this. And we'll select those. And we have, okay, almost 191 anchor points when only 8 are needed. So I go in and I clean up all of that. So what I end up with is my artwork looking like this. And now it only has 626 instead of 2,500 anchor points, and this is acceptable. So I just wanted to show you that because you're going to run into that. I want to be honest with how certain features work and just show you how I resolve them. And unfortunately, I resolved this with a plugin. Not unfortunately, that's just the only way to do it natively in Illustrator. If that doesn't bug you, then it's not really a problem. The art looks the way it should. It's just a little sloppy in terms of how many extra anchor points. So once I have this, I'm going to make a copy of this, Command-C, Command-F. And instead of brown, I'm going to color it this color. And I'm just going to add a nice little drop shadow. So we're going to use the nudge keys on the keyboard. And I'm going to nudge it to the right 7 clicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to nudge it down 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't want this full value. So let's go to here and we're going to make it 45%. I'm going to copy it, select my art, and Command-B to paste behind, and it creates a nice drop shadow like that. So I like doing that with this style. I think it looks nice having some dimensionality to it. Now, what could you use this artwork for? Well, I used it for promotional design, so I'm just going to show you that. Growing up, there was a really great park where I lived. I grew up in Lacey, Washington, and they had a park called Wonderwood Park. We used to play baseball there. They had, this is, of course, pre-digital, so they had these really cool, like, exploration courses throughout the woods, and you'd use a compass to find your way through. It's kind of fun. So this was a park that I created this design for so they could sell it on t-shirts. This style would work perfect for that, and one color is shown here. It also works really great on a colored or dark background because it doesn't have that problem that some graphics have where what should read as light reads as dark. It works on either a light colored or dark colored background. So it's really forgiving in that sense. This is a fun style to work in and one that anyone could learn to do. Remember, it just takes your ability to look at a complex form like an owl and deduce it down into simplified lines to capture the essence of the theme you're creating. I encourage you to pick a topic and give this style a try on your own. And once you have, share it with me. I'd love to see what you create. If you like this movie, please share a link to my YouTube channel on social media. I'd appreciate that a lot. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe as well. Thank you for watching People of Process. I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.